laughing. I mean, I've read that one pill can cause Parkinson's disease and things like this, and it's like, wow, I know thousands of people that have taken thousands of them, and I don't know anybody had Parkinson's disease.
In 2002, a prestigious British journal, The New Scientist, challenged the U.S. government's position on ecstasy. The magazine had leading independent scientists look at the evidence and answer the question, does MDMA harm brain cells? The journal concluded, the jury is still out.
So you can see the front of the brain, the back of the brain.
Dr. Stephen Kish is one of the world's leading researchers studying the chemistry of the brain, and he is one of the few scientists willing to openly criticize the government's claims about ecstasy and brain damage. He is especially critical of the NIDA postcard and the science behind it.
The problem with these index cards given to young people by NIDA is that the brain scan pictures in the ecstasy users looked like there were actually holes, large holes in the brain, and that's just not true. But I think for me the main problem with the index cards is that it was based on faulty data, the faulty data from Ricarte's 1998 study.
Dr. Ricarte said in this first study that the serotonin reduction could be from 50 to 85% in the subjects he examined. Do you believe that to be an accurate assessment?
No, I don't. Something, in my opinion, went very wrong in his brain scan study, something in the measurement procedure. And I think many other scientists would draw no conclusions whatsoever from his study because his study was simply too flawed.
According to Dr. Kish, there were two fundamental problems with the Ricarte serotonin study. First, Dr. Ricarte could not have been certain that his subjects had actually used ecstasy, even on a single occasion, because he never confirmed it by testing samples of their hair. Second, in one group of subjects, Dr. Ricarte found that some brains had about 40 times more serotonin than others. Scientists say such a variation is simply not possible. Dr. Kish and other scientists now point to a German study as the most important one in the field. Published in 2003, it found only a slight 5% loss of serotonin function. And unlike Dr. Ricarte, the German scientists confirmed that their subjects had used ecstasy by testing hair samples.
This study, I think, is by far the best study published so far, in terms of the accuracy of the measurement and the general design and the sample size, which is quite large.
Dr. Mark Laruelle studies the effects of illegal drugs on the brain. He is one of the leading brain imaging experts in the world.
The German study showed that in people who had used ecstasy, but who had stopped taking ecstasy for at least 2 or 3 months, normal serotonin function was found. So this study suggests that there is indeed a reduction in serotonin function in subjects that are using ecstasy, but that reduction might be reversible after 2 or 3 months of abstinence.
So the German study suggests that the U.S. government's claim that ecstasy causes devastating, irreversible brain damage was a dramatic exaggeration of the risk.
Ricarte published a finding indicating a massive, almost a near total in some brain areas, 50 to 85%, a massive loss of the serotonin marker. And the Germans, instead of finding this massive loss, they reported just the slightest 4 to 5% change. But still, I would suggest that the public should hold off on final judgment on this question. We only have one study, the German study, that we put some faith in. I would like to see the German results replicated.
But if I hear you correctly on the first Ricarte study, you just think it's plain bad science.
Yes. But you'd have to ask Ricarte why did he make those statements?
ABC News did ask Dr. Ricarte many times for a television interview to discuss his work, and he never responded to our requests. And remember Dr. Ricarte's 2002 study, the one that claimed humans could develop Parkinson's disease from 1 common recreational dose of ecstasy? This dire warning was based on experiments performed on monkeys, injected with what Dr. Riccardi claimed was ecstasy.
Other items in the national news tonight. One of the country's leading researchers into the effects of the drug ecstasy has admitted a major flaw in his research. Dr. George Riccardi of Johns Hopkins University has retracted a study published last year which claimed that a single night of using ecstasy can cause serious brain damage and even Parkinson's disease. Dr. Riccardi admitted he mistakenly gave methamphetamine, a far more toxic substance than ecstasy, to the monkeys he used in the study.
In his retraction letter to the journal Science, Dr. Riccardi blamed his problems on a labeling error by his pharmaceutical supplier, RTI International. The company has rejected the doctor's story, saying it found no evidence of a labeling error.
Young people don't believe, many of them, that MDMA causes holes in your brains, will profoundly inhibit your ability to be a student, or reduce your capacity for emotional expression, because they don't see that directly. So I think that that kind of exaggeration of risk is harmful in and of itself, more so even than the drugs, because it causes people to believe nothing that they're told.
The government-funded studies, they seem to be funding studies that are guaranteed to find something wrong with it. I mean, I just don't trust them.
I'll tell you what, I think the government loses credibility every time they lie about the drug. Every time I hear something which is patently untrue about the drug, it just makes me think, well, they're going to lie about everything.
There's a very, very heavy cost to the process of devaluing information that comes from the government. Lincoln was right. Public trust in government is a precious resource. And there's a question about how much of it we want to squander on telling kids not to use drugs.
If the government took a more honest approach and was more respectful of people's intelligences, I think they would actually build credibility instead of just derision.
We said at the beginning of this program that ecstasy is a nightmare for the government's drug controllers, and in part it is a nightmare of their own making. The government has been determined to stop the spread of ecstasy by making dramatic claims about brain damage that are exaggerated and unconvincing, and the ecstasy users we talk to are simply not listening. This year, if current trends continue, 1.8 million Americans will try ecstasy for the first time. Only marijuana will attract more first-timers. And the government's message is still, just say no.
Autopsy report. Case number 00-. The body is that of a well-developed, well-nourished adult Caucasian female.
The latest campaign against ecstasy is now focused on the tragic fact that people have died from taking the drug.
Cardial surfaces of the 280-gram heart.
But even a former director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse describes the risk of death as minimal.
Do you believe that pure ecstasy can cause people to die?
I think that there are some individuals who are especially vulnerable to this drug, and it will kill them. Are there a lot? I don't believe that there are a lot.
A New York medical examiner looked at the role that ecstasy played in unnatural and accidental deaths in New York City.
I reviewed all of the deaths that occurred about over a 3-year period that were reported to the medical examiner's office and underwent autopsy. That included about a total of 19,000 deaths. Of those 19,000 deaths, I found 22 had ecstasy in their system, and 2 of those died from ecstasy and ecstasy only. There are probably prescription medications that people die from more frequently than MDMA.
2 deaths during a period when, according to the DEA, New Yorkers used about 110 million doses of ecstasy. Ecstasy users know from their own experience that the risk of sudden death is minuscule. Overstating this risk is not going to stop them from taking the drug. But there are risks that many ecstasy users do understand. Ecstasy is a street drug. When ecstasy was made illegal, criminals got involved. And to maximize profits, dealers often mix ecstasy with cheaper, more dangerous substances.
We've seen all different kinds of fake ecstasy pills. pills that are made out of speed.